Hey, I guess we're live. Well, I was going to do the. I got echo in here. There, that's better. I was going to do Hourglass, my theme music from Squeeze, but I'm not going to hold my phone up like that anymore. So, um, we're live. It's taking early lunch. It's Monday. Today is February 17th, and if I sound a little more bass deep than I usually do, it's because I am. I have been traveling all weekend. I left Friday morning to go home because I was going to Atlantic City on Saturday night to see my friend Vince Curatola. He played Johnny Sack in The Sopranos, and they're touring right now. I say touring; they're doing shows, and it's scheduled, but it's not like a tour across the country. Um, they're doing this thing called The Sopranos meets Sinatra, and or Sinatra meets The Sopranos, and it's Vince, Federico Castellucci that played Furio, and uh, Jason. Oh gosh, what is Jason's last name? Sorbonne, that played Jackie Aprile Jr. Um, and I went and Facebook's an amazing thing. I've known Vince and his wife for a number of years now, and I met Vince actually through Twitter. That's a great story. Here, let me tell you. So, how did you meet the great Johnny Sack? Well, like this. I had written a book in 2015 called The Accidental Mobster, and it's a mob parody. And if you know, like everybody loves mafia stories, right? But mafia comedies don't work well. I don't think they do. I think to me, the only mafia comedy that's actually ever worked as a movie was Analyze This, and that's because you didn't try to take the mobster out of his being a mobster. You just found funny things to do. Um, and then you had Billy Crystal being inserted into that world, who was this just nerdy psychologist. So they've tried making mob comedies. My Blue Heaven. Now I'm a Steve Martin fan. I think he's a genius. So he did well with that, only because he just played it so over the top. Um, but there's nothing. If you think about it, there's not much really funny about the mafia, right? I mean, these are essentially sociopaths, and to try to put them in funny circumstances is not going to work. What made you laugh at episodes of The Sopranos was um, the funny things they would say to each other, but that wasn't because they were in a mob. That was just an Italian sort of Northeast thing. We kind of all talk to each other that way. That sort of smart alecky, funny things that we say that we don't sometimes even mean them to be funny, but they just are. And I figured that the only way to do this properly was to make it be a case of mistaken identity. And it's really all based on my life in the 27 years now that I've lived in the South, because I'm Italian from South Philly. And especially when The Sopranos was on the air and I lived in Nashville, which is, much deeper south than Lynchburg, Virginia, where I live now. And I would get phone calls every Monday morning because The Sopranos ran on Sunday nights. And they called me Philly Craig back then. That was my nickname because I'm from Philly. And there was a bunch of us that all called the morning sports station there. They called us the Goon Squad. So I was one of the Goon Squatters, and they called me Philly Craig. And I'd get these phone calls every Monday after the Sopranos ran the night before. When something like this, hey Philly, hey man, last night when they whacked that guy on the Sopranos, man, what'd they do that with that? And they're asking me questions about whacking a guy. I'm like, what am I in the witness protection program? Like, I'm not even Sicilian. My family's from Monte Cassino, which is 2.5 hours southwest of Rome. Yeah, we're still southern Italy, but we're not, it was funny to me. So I eventually started playing along with it. And I got in a couple of really good, funny jokes on some friends of mine, which are some great stories. And so I was following Vince Curatola on Twitter, and we were talking politics. He's a great guy and a funny man and very interactive with his fans. And his life is an amazing story. He and his wife, for one thing, just a great team. One of those marriages you go, that's what I want. I want a team like that each of them believe in each other and love each other dearly. And the other thing is that he's just got that sense of humor. So we were talking politics. So this would have probably been, it was after the book was published. It's probably 2015, 2016. Paul Ryan was still a Speaker of the House. And Vince posted a picture of Paul Ryan, who obviously dyed his hair black, with the line, Vince's quote was, "A guy dyes his hair, he's already lying to you." Now, I read it instantly in Johnny Sack's voice, which made me laugh even more. I wrote, you can reply to the tweet. I said, "Can I use this in my next book?" And Vince says, "What's the book about?" And I told him about the accidental mob story. I said, "I'm writing a sequel to it. That might even be the title. A guy dyes his hair." Like, I just think that's a great line. It just cracked me up. It's such a Italian wisecrack Northeast kind of a comment. Guy dyes his hair, he's already lying to you. And I've kept that in mind as I've been tempted over the years to dye my hair. I just won't do it. He said, "Sure, but under one condition." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "You got to send me a copy of the current book." So I sent him a copy and he fell in love with it. And we just struck up a friendship. And he's actually been encouraging me for years to make a movie out of it. And I actually bought the software. I'm working on a manuscript now. So maybe someday you're going to see that on Netflix or Amazon Prime or something. But that's how I got to know Vince. And so we started, talking politics and talking stuff on social media. And then he did a show. He's such a supremely talented man. I mean, besides being a great actor, he has a acting school. He gets kind of his giving back to the community. And he sings and he's a tremendous guitar player. And you know how I know, and Maureen, if you ever see this, if you watch this, I hope you'll tell Vince this. Here's how I knew that we got in a Twitter chat about guitars one day and guitar playing. And he told me, I said, "Who's your favorite, guitar player?" He said, "Joe Pass," who's an Italian guy. You Google or YouTube the guy. What an amazing guy. And what a life story. You don't hear a lot about Joe Pass, but he's as good as any of the other great jazz guitarists. You'd hear the Django Reinhardts and the Wes Montgomerys and George Benson. He's, that vein. And I said, "Well, what kind of guitar do you play?" And instant response, D'Angelico. Now, from my guitar friends, you got your Gibsons and your Stratocasters, your Fenders and your Gibson and Fender, and you've got your, I don't know, Charvel Jackson if you're a heavy metal guy. When you start talking about D'Angelico, John D'Angelico has been dead for 40 years. I mean, the guy was making hand-built guitars in Brooklyn, New York, I think Brooklyn or Bronx, in the 40s. And these things are works of art. We're talking about, for my hunting friends, it's the difference between, going to Dick's Sporting Goods and buying a nice Remington deer rifle or getting a Weatherby Mark V. Like it's so pretty, you don't even want to shoot it. Well, D'Angelico were such quality guitars that if you bought one and hung it on your wall and just to look at it, nobody would blame you for that. But they sound amazing. They're each one was hand built. It's that sort of a thing. And so when he said D'Angelico, I'm like, this guy ain't playing. This guy knows his stuff, because most people have never even heard of a D'Angelico guitar. And so we struck up a friendship. So back in 2018, we went up. He was doing a show at a place called Maureen's Jazz Cellar in Nyack, New York, and it was a Sinatra thing. He was doing "Come Fly with Me," and he had a band and he sang. It was predominantly Sinatra songs, and it was in that sort of big band dinner club kind of a atmosphere. So Daisy and I drove up, and we went for both shows. I figured if I'm driving all the way to New York from Virginia, I'm not just going for one show. He had an early and a late. So we stayed for both shows and just had a blast and visited with him and got to know him. Now, Maureen's here on Facebook. Vince doesn't do Facebook. But we stayed in touch, exchanged Christmas cards, and I hear from them. And the nice thing is every time there's ever an interaction between me and Maureen here on Facebook or me and Vince on Instagram, that's mostly where he is now. He's always asked about my daughter, and that's that's the kind of, I might have played Johnny Sack on the greatest TV show that ever was, but I still am a guy, and I still am. We're still good people. He and his wife both, and we're just regular folks that met my daughter, and Vince is always asking about her singing and that kind of thing. So anyway, I drove up and I wanted to go to the show, and it was another mutual friend that we have, Vince and Maureen and myself, who I only know through Facebook because she's a friend of the Curatolas, and I've never met Sanofi. So she was there with her family. We, probably been friends on Facebook 10 years at least, and I finally get to meet her. And I had a blast, and the band was fantastic. I mean, just, you go see a big band, you're not going to see young kids because it takes years of somebody's life to play that kind of music and play it really well. This was a band full of, older, mature people that have been playing that kind of music and really honing their chops for a long time. And then Mike Marino was the comedian. He was the kind of an opening act, very funny, very Italian guy. And then the singer, gosh, I know I'm going to go blank here. I wanted to say it was Mike Matuzzi. I'll put it in the comments after this is over. And the City Limits Band, I think, is what the name of the band was. But my goodness. And here's the best part. So he knew Frank Sinatra. He worked with him. It's not a Sinatra impersonation. He's not trying to be Frank Sinatra. He's not trying to be like, yeah, close your eyes. You think that's Frank up there. He was keeping the music going. He was perpetuating the style. And when you try to do that, now naturally some of that is going to, overlap, and there's going to be some Sinatra-isms because Frank was the face of that music, but and I find that refreshing. It's better than, some guy at the Holiday Inn Express, at 11:30 on a Friday night, and he's doing Sinatra and he's trying to sound like Sinatra and be Frank. You just can't do that. The only person out there that does a really spot on Sinatra impersonation, if you want to call it that, and he's awesome at it, and he does it so well and with such an honor of Frank that you don't feel he's trying to rip off Sinatra. And the guy's famous in his own right, so he doesn't need to do that. Is Robert Davi. You guys ever seen Robert Davi? Now, the name probably sounds familiar. If you saw Die Hard, remember the two FBI agents that go up in the helicopter and they're trying to shoot Bruce Willis's character, John McClane. He's the guy with the bad acting. He's that actor. He's got he had scarring, some kind of scarring acting when he was a kid. Real Italian looking guy. He played one of the Fratelli brothers in The Goonies. He's been in a million movies. But if you look him up as a Sinatra tribute, my goodness, he nails it. Just, that's one of those things where you go, wow, if I close my eyes, I think that's Frank up there. Hang on one second. I need to just make sure. Yep, we're good. So those of you watching on YouTube, I finally figured out how to get the YouTube channel going at the same time as the one here on Facebook. So I did have a poll going today. So anyway, I was up there. I drove up Friday morning super early, and I left my house at before 5 o'clock. And I got to the house and I was exhausted. So I got to hang out with my folks and we went to dinner. No, they went to dinner. They had Valentine's plans before I came up. So they went to dinner. I went to Wawa, the greatest convenience store in the world. Sorry, Sheets. And I got some dinner from there. I came home and I ate, and I actually was in bed at 6:30 on Valentine's Day, which sums up my Valentine's life. It was fun. And I slept from about 6:30. I got up once at midnight, and I woke up at 7 a.m. I don't remember sleeping 12 hours and it being not because I was sick. In, I don't know, half my lifetime, I just don't sleep. I don't like to. I feel like I'm missing something if I'm not up early. But it was good. So, I got up and I hung out with the Rents. We got breakfast, and I went to watch my nephew play hockey, and then I headed over to Atlantic City and got over to AC, and I didn't stay at it was at Harrah's, but I couldn't stay at Harrah's. My gosh, I bought cars cheaper than a room at Harrah's on a Saturday night on on Valentine's weekend. But I got there. I got to see the show, and that was wonderful. We went backstage for a few minutes. They had a meet and greet, and of course Vince I knew. It's always good to see him. And the look on his face when I got there, I think he was surprised that I came because he knew Sin was coming, but she's an hour and a half away, and he knew it's like a 7-hour drive for me. He was kind of shocked, and Federico Castelluccio and Jason Serbone were so nice. And I didn't ask. This is one question I wanted to ask. They opened it to the audience. The questions were pre-scripted, but they did open it to the audience. And I was going to try to get the guy with the microphone, and I forgot. But there's one question I wanted to ask. So my Soprano watching fans, you may agree with me on this. Jason Serbone played Jackie Aprile Jr., who was stupid. It's just the kid was in the character was an idiot. There were two people on that show that were blithering idiots. And I don't know these men personally, but I could tell by talking to Jason Saturday night, he's the antithesis of that. He's a smart guy. And then the other was Ray Abruzzo, who played Carmine Lupertazzi Jr., Carmine Jr., and he was a moron on the show, like always butchering words and saying the wrong things. And so I wanted to ask Jason, and I forgot to, and I forgot again when I got backstage, and we got some pictures and stuff. We were chatting for a bit, and I wanted to ask him, how hard is it to play an idiot? I mean, you're not stupid. You can't be stupid to be an actor. I think, we may disagree with some actors politically, but that doesn't make them dumb. It maybe makes them not wise, taking certain stances, but it doesn't mean that they're stupid people. How tough must it be? Because both of those guys played the parts perfectly. Like I was, and Vince would say things. I've heard him say in the past about not catching somebody acting. So they're so believable that you don't think they're acting. And I really expected Jason Serbone when he first opened his mouth, because it was kind of a round robin, questions get asked. And I was fully expecting Jason Serbone to be like, yeah, man, like if you saw the show, he was just, he dropped out of college. He's playing Scrabble with Meadow Soprano, who's a student at Columbia studying pre-med at the time. They're playing Scrabble, and the best word he can come up with is sex, right? So it's just like, that's the mindset, right? He was just an idiot. And then Carmine Lupertazzi Jr. was, oh my gosh, the scenes where he would just butcher things. If you go and there's a whole video montage of all the stupid things that Carmine Jr. said. Neither of these people are dumb like that. I mean, to be able to play something like that so believably that people think this guy must have been hit in the head when he was a kid or something. Like, what's up? I wanted to ask them, how do you get into that mindset? Because playing a tough guy, you have to get into that character. You have to draw something from inside yourself that connects you to that. What do you draw from inside yourself that connects you to somebody that's really just plain stupid? Just really stupid. I really wish I'd asked that, because I'd love to know that. That's got to be the hardest thing to play, is somebody dumb. Because nobody is as dumb as those two people were on the show. So I'm going to break open Facebook on my phone, because I did have a couple polls on Facebook. And I hope somebody chimed in. So my questions were, what's your favorite leftovers lunch? Your favorite, bring your leftover from home for lunch at work meal. And so here's one that most people are probably going to say. And then when you think about it, it's like, no, pizza. Nobody brings pizza from home. I don't think. I've never seen anybody do it. Pizza is the universal leftover breakfast, right? Especially when you're in college. I once had the idea during finals week at Liberty of going and ordering a bunch of pizzas late at night and just leaving them in my dorm overnight, and then selling them in the mornings when people were cramming for finals before they left for class. Because a lot of guys would cram right on through, and they wouldn't go down to the dining hall for lunch or for breakfast, and they'd go right to class. So I always thought that Domino's would be smart to have a morning shift. Like, why don't you just deliver pizzas at 7 a.m.? People get up, you have, make some pizzas at night, stick them in the cooler, so you deliver them cold, because that's the best way to eat a leftover pizza. Everybody knows that. And sell leftover pizza It's not technically leftover because it never sold. It was never sent over the counter. So you're allowed to do that and have a morning delivery for, if in college towns, man, that's, that's the, that's the breakfast of champions for, single college guys, this leftover pizza. So lunchtime, what do you guys bring from lunch? Leftovers. I'm not talking about packing a lunch, making a tuna sandwich or something. I'm talking leftovers. So I think, for me, it was, I got, when I was eating a lot of carbs, I don't really do that much anymore. Um, Pasta. Anytime I made, lasagna or stuffed shells or spaghetti and meatballs, I always brought it to work, and it made my coworkers jealous. I was thinking of when I was working at Liberty, especially. Hoagies, subs, whatever you want to call them. That's definitely, you get the real monster one from Capriotti's back home, and you can only eat half because it's a monster. And there was a place back home that was okay. So my Delaware friends are going to remember this. The rest of you, I'm sure there's one of these in your neighborhood. So if there is, comment. It was called De Costanza's, and this thing was so big you couldn't shut it. You could not close the roll. And literally, we used to buy a large from De Costanza's, like say an Italian or something. You take it home and you pull a bunch of the meat off, and then you eat the hoagie, the sub, the way it was, and you had like literally a baggie full of meat. You can make like 3 or 4 sandwiches later. And they went out of business. They catered some kind of a business event, and they got a bad shipment of meat, and some people got not botulism, nothing bad, just little food poisoning, and a couple people got sick. Nobody died, nothing like that, but the bad rep got out. And the other thing was, old man De Costanza wanted to get out of business, and his kids didn't want it, so it was all the excuse he needed to shut it down. He was tired of it. He'd been around like 50 years making subs. I guess I'd be kind of, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this. How am I going to get out? I got to go to play the ponies at Delaware Park. So I guess a leftover sandwich that you ordered from someplace good. Soup. I've seen people bring soup. I don't know. After Thanksgiving, right? So the week after Thanksgiving, you go back to work. It's turkey sandwiches galore. What do you guys say? You can mention it in the comments. The comment section's always up and running after the show's over. And the other question I had on the topic of Sinatra, because we were at this the Sinatra show, and what are your favorite Frank Sinatra songs? Because I was listening to this guy do these, and he probably did 10 songs, and he did the ones everybody wants to hear pretty much. I've Got the World on a String. Now that one's probably as much a Tony Bennett hit as it is Sinatra. They both recorded that. I think that's Cole Porter, and they both recorded that, and both of them had giant hits with it. And both of their styles are. Frank was probably a little more powerful, like hard hitting. Tony Bennett had that kind of velvet. He just seemed like he was a little more like, a little tougher to get under Tony Bennett's skin. You never heard any stories about Tony Bennett beating somebody up in a restaurant, right? But you heard the Sinatra stories now and then. So he did that. He did Fly Me to the Moon. He obviously New York, New York. You can't do it. You can't mention Frank Sinatra and be a singer and not do New York, New York. He did Summer Wind. The ones everybody wants to hear. And it was really good. And his whole thing, and he kept saying this throughout the show, was that the reason he does it is to keep this music going, so that kids don't only know of Frank Sinatra someday because they went to the Smithsonian, there was a display. Like the kids, my daughter loves Sinatra. My daughter loves Johnny Cash. I made sure growing up that my daughter listened to some of the things that our musical experience in America was built on. She knew Johnny Cash and Frank Sinatra and Aretha and a lot of early Motown, because I was always a big fan of early Motown. And she loved Stevie Wonder at one point. She's a giant David Bowie fan. If you were to, force her at gunpoint to only pick one musician she can never listen to ever again in her life, it's going to be Bowie. And she loved Queen. And she likes a lot of new stuff too. But but she had that grounding, and I agree with that with what this guy said. Like there's so much depth to Sinatra. And yeah, you can, it's old guys music. Yeah, but so good. They didn't have computers engineering somebody's voice. They didn't have auto tune. They didn't have digital microphones that, you had to know your craft and you had to be good. And there's a reason, even if you don't like Sinatra particularly, to listen to the craftsmanship and make sure that that benchmark never goes away. Right. That's one of the bigger things. That's why you keep the old music around. There's nothing wrong with new music, but just make sure that they realize, hey, this is the foundation that these people built on are people that really worked for a living, really worked hard. And you couldn't be average in the era of Sinatra. You wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So what are your favorite Sinatra songs? I New York, New York's obvious. It's got that kind of, big booming and it's like show tune. My Way's a good song. It's just sad. And a lot of people don't know the backstory to that. So Frank retired in 76. He announced he was retiring. I think it was 76. And Paul Anka actually wrote that song for him as his farewell to music. It sounds like it's a guy at the end of his life, like assessing his integrity and his moral stance. And all it really was a musical summary of the way Frank did his performing career. And Paul Anka actually wrote that for him. But it has become much more than that, right? It's become sort of an anthem to a well-lived life. And it's the highs and lows because it talks about the good times and the bad times. And so it's that he did that one. That's a great song. I think Summer Wind is one of my favorites. When I was 25, I that's such a sad song. To me, that sounds like a wasted life, like a guy that, chased, as Frank would say, chased liquor and broads all his life and ends up with nothing. Not the way I would have chosen to live my life. And he didn't either. It's a, that was an observant song. New York, New York's a great one. Come Fly With Me. Definitely, it is one of my favorite Sinatra songs. And a lot of his Christmas stuff, like that's one of the Christmas CDs that Daisy and I listen to all the time is Frank Sinatra. And his Ave Maria is just spine tingling. It really is. It's terrific. Bleep bloop that in the comment section. Give me your favorite Sinatra songs. What do you love? Who do you think is the closest? This is a good question. I just thought of this. I didn't plan on this one. Who do you think is the closest to Sinatra right now, as far as talent, magnetism, and that sort of larger than life, cool, just wow. He walks in the room and you don't even think about calling him Frank. It's Mr. Sinatra. So who's that now? Because I can't think of anybody. I don't, Michael Bublé. He doesn't make me want to not call him Michael or be afraid to reach my hand out and shake it because he might slap it or punch me in the mouth. Or he doesn't make it when he walks through a room. I wouldn't think. I've never met Michael Bublé or Harry Connick. Both of them talented guys. Just saying, they don't make me go, holy cow. I was 10 feet from Michael Bublé. But if I was 10 feet from Frank Sinatra, I may just get spray paint a mark on the floor so nobody ever forgets. Do we even have those kind of people anymore? For me, it used to be Springsteen. He just became such a jerk. I don't really care, and he's nothing to me now, but it would have been Bruce back in the day. I think, from just a star standpoint in general, maybe we have to go outside of music. Neil Diamond. Neil Diamond for me would be a guy that, because he's been around so long, he's so talented, and he's been, if I met him, I would be like Mr. Diamond, and I would be in awe, and I would wait for him to put his hand out before I put my hand out, that kind of thing. I don't know, some of you are shaking your head at that, right? But I am a an unabashed Neil Diamond fan. And the Monkees, I love them too. I made a video about that the other day. You know, anybody? Yeah, that's a good question. Who do you guys think is in that realm of Sinatra and that sort of awe-inspiring? Wow, I can't believe I just met you, sort of thing. Trying to get some poll answers here. Anyway, so that's what Craig did for his weekend. And I got a scratchy throat this morning. I feel okay. I got a little scratchy throat, and I'm wondering, how could I possibly have ended up maybe catching a germ? I mean, I was only in a crowded casino in Atlantic City on a rainy Saturday night with 10 or 12,000 people in the main room. That's probably not it. So anyway, well, guys, that's been a half hour already. Half hour of me talking to you. So if you get a chance, the show is called The Sopranos Meet Sinatra. Let me see if I can pull it up on my phone. I got a picture, and I'm going to give you the names of the folks involved so you can maybe go find it yourself. Sit tight. I got it here. I thought I did. Well, I don't. I'll put that in the comment section as well. If they're around you, go see them. And the Q&A was just wonderful. And they, it seems like every Sopranos conversation inevitably goes back to the actors on stage, their interactions with James Gandolfini. They all loved him. I mean, he was such an amazing person. And I only know that from hearing other people talk. I obviously never knew him, but Vince knew him really well. Like Vince and him were friends for years before they did The Sopranos, and to hear them talk about the kind of kindness that he showed and how humble he was, how he never really could understand why he was seen as a big star, and he never let it get to his head. He was very generous with his friends and his coworkers. It's very heartwarming to hear. James Gandolfini was definitely taken too soon. So there's a rest area on the Garden State Parkway that's been being dedicated, and it's going to be named the James Gandolfini Rest Area, March 30th. And I'd love to go to that. I don't think I'll be able to free my time to go up to that, but I know Vince is going to be there and Maureen and them. So, and I know James's family will be there. So that was interesting to hear too. Vince was a part of that, getting that going, because he inducted him into the New Jersey Hall of Fame posthumously. And I think they were spearheading that, getting some kind of a memorial for James Gandolfini. So, well, today's February 17th, and this has been Take an Early Lunch with yours truly. Let me know. Let's go. I mean, the poll's always open. You can continue to answer the questions, and I'll post in the comment section what the questions were. What's your favorite leftover bring from home to have lunch at work thing? And what's your favorite Frank Sinatra song? All right, you guys, join me again next Monday. Today is President's Day. So I just realized that a lot of people aren't even in the office today because it's President's Day. I know the school across the street's closed. We're open, but banks are closed. Anyway, so you guys have a great day. I am back to work. See you.